As both a follower of Jesus and a white man, I've been seeking to better understand the term white privilege. It's become a lightning rod in our culture because it's used to shame and marginalize rather than to inspire and motivate, like Martin Luther King did with his I Have a Dream speech. But in this podcast, I want to move past the emotion as much as possible and ask, is white privilege real? Where did the term privilege come from, and what does the Bible have to say? Now, recently, I learned something very disturbing about the precursor to the term white privilege. Even more disturbing was discovering the historical solution for privilege. Now, it exposes a dirty little secret that no one talks about. It's radically different than God's solution. Oh, yes, God has a definite solution. Surprisingly, it too is a form of privilege. I'll talk about that at the end of this podcast. Now, if you really care about the problem of privilege, in our culture, you need to understand the origin of the term as well as its troubling underlying assumption. This is Brad Bright. Welcome to the God is Issue podcast, where I show how God is the issue in every issue. Why? Because we can trace all our human problems to our view of God. Now, if you find this podcast helpful, please remember to like and subscribe. Now, when subscribing, don't forget to click on the bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new podcast. It may surprise you to learn that long before Peggy McIntosh, a radical feminist, coined the term white privilege, Adolf Hitler weaponized the term privilege to marginalize the Jews. In his letter to Adolf Gimlich, dated September 16, 1919, Hitler wrote, quote, "An anti-Semitism based on reason must lead to systemic legal combating and elimination of the privileges of the Jews," unquote. Both the words systemic and privilege flowed from Hitler's pen in the space of one sentence. Now, socialists of all stripes believe evil in society is at its core systemic and is based on privilege. It doesn't matter if you're a democratic socialist like Bernie Sanders, a state socialist like Joseph Stalin, or a national socialist like Adolf Hitler. Socialism assumes that the fundamental problems in society are systemic, not personal. Now, 14 years prior to seizing power in Germany, Hitler was already beating the drum of systemic privilege, but instead of affixing it to whites, he tagged it to the Jews. And of course, he was able to seize power in no small part because he was able to vilify the Jews for their systemic privilege. Now, Hitler's goal, according to his letter, was to eliminate Jewish privilege. Let that one sink in. Now, in light of that, let me ask you, is privilege real? Is white privilege real? The answer is yes, it is. If you define privilege as feminist Peggy McIntosh did, as unearned advantage, then yes, it's real. White privilege is real. IQ privilege is real. Athletic privilege is real. Artistic privilege is real. Height privilege is real. Good looks privilege is real. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. Privilege is real. There are all kinds of unearned privilege. You can probably name many kinds that I didn't mention. But here's the dirty little secret no one tells you. You'll never get rid of privilege. Never. For instance, no socialist country on the face of the earth has ever gotten rid of privilege despite their rhetoric. They've only transferred it. Do you really believe that in China, North Korea, and Cuba today there's no privilege? Are you really going to insist that the very chubby Kim Jong-un is not privileged? Are you really going to argue that socialist Bernie Sanders, a United States senator who owns 3 homes, is not privileged? Privilege exists, and you'll never get rid of it for one indisputable reason: because you'll never get rid of power. Privilege and power are simply two sides of the same coin. Power never goes away. It just gets transferred or redistributed. It was transferred in the French Revolution. It was transferred in Nazi Germany. It was transferred in Soviet Russia. It was transferred in Maoist China. It was transferred in Venezuela. But it never disappeared. The conversation about privilege is really a conversation about power. Who gets it and who doesn't. It's not about equality before the law. Our laws in America regarding racial equality are comprehensive. That's not the issue. Rather, it's about the transfer or distribution of privilege and power. Here's the key to understanding what the unstated agenda behind the term privilege is. Now, don't miss this. Whoever's in charge of the redistribution of privilege becomes the new power broker, the new locus of power. That's why secular progressives and socialists have weaponized the term white privilege to shame, intimidate, and marginalize in order to gain greater power over you. If they can shame you, they can control you. If brandishing the term white privilege did not amplify their power, they would discard it yesterday. Secular progressives plan on being the ones in charge of transferring privilege, that is, redistributing power. Always listen for the word power. That's the tip-off. That's the tell. Whenever people talk about power rather than equality or coming together, they've revealed their true agenda. Now, the lust for power never leads to equality. It simply transfers power to new power brokers. I think that's what Tolkien was trying to tell us in The Lord of the Rings through his depiction of the Ring of Power. So always ask yourself this question. Does this person or group focus more on trying to shame and intimidate me, thereby granting them power over me, or on bringing people together? If your answer is power, then proceed with great caution. That's the difference between secular progressives and Jesus. Secular progressives lust for power. Folks, they're upfront about it. But Jesus offers reconciliation and true equality through the cross. Socialism teaches that broken systems create broken people. The Bible teaches that broken people create broken systems. Those two beliefs are polar opposites. Therefore, the question, how do we eliminate systemic privilege, is the wrong question. The only way to eliminate privilege is to eliminate power. But you can never eliminate power. You can only transfer it. So what's the right question? How do I love my neighbor as myself? God's solution for privilege is to love our neighbors as ourselves. It's not to discriminate against those who have discriminated against you, as Ibram X. Kendi advocated in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. Now, let me say parenthetically, Jesus defined loving your neighbor as yourself as do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And he illustrated it in the parable of the Good Samaritan. He both defined it and illustrated it. So according to Jesus, you don't have to love yourself in order to love your neighbor. You just have to treat them the way you want to be treated. Look, when I have your back and you have mine, and we all have the backs of the least of these, then privilege becomes a non-issue. It doesn't cease to exist. It simply becomes irrelevant. Why? Because I use my privilege, my power, for the good of my neighbor, not just for my own good. Love doesn't eliminate privilege, it defangs it. But here's the catch. I believe it's virtually impossible to truly love your neighbor as yourself if you don't first love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. It's my love for God that both motivates and enables me to treat others the way I would like to be treated, just like it was Jesus' love for his Father that motivated him to endure the cross for me. Of course, this begs the question, what if people don't love God or even believe in God? That's a real problem, isn't it? But there is a solution. You see, I have another form of privilege I haven't talked about yet that has nothing to do with my skin color, my IQ, my athletic ability, or the place where I was born. It has to do with a gift God gave me. An unearned gift, a free gift, an unearned advantage, if you will. It's called salvation, folks. It's spiritual privilege. I didn't earn it, neither did you, but it's the most powerful form of privilege on earth. It's entirely unearned, but anyone can acquire it. It's the only form of privilege that can literally transfer to anyone and everyone. True equality begins at the foot of the cross with spiritual privilege. It's the only place where we are all truly equal. I think we often forget that. Which brings me back to God's solution. What is it? It's you and it's me. As followers of Jesus, the answer is us. We are God's solution. Now, that's a little scary, isn't it? But hear me out. Man's solution for privilege is to transfer or redistribute power. God's solution is revival. As followers of Jesus, we must extend God's love everywhere we go. We need to let people know that God loves them and explain to them how they can begin a personal relationship with the God who gives them spiritual privilege. And finally, folks, we must pray, dare I say, beg God to send revival, first in our own life, then in the church, and ultimately across America. Now, let me remind you, man's solution for privilege is to transfer or redistribute power. But all that does is give birth to a new category of privilege, a new power structure to replace the previous power structure. God's solution for privilege is revival. Love is the only thing that can defang and overcome privilege, and you can only love others with God's love if you first love God. You see, love, not power, is God's solution to privilege, and revival is the only path to get there. So, as followers of Jesus, we should be planting the seeds of revival every day. We can't make revival happen. Only God's Spirit can. But we can plant seeds for it. So what are you willing to do today to help bring revival to your own heart, to your church, to your neighborhood, to your community, to America? What seeds are you willing to plant today that God could use to help spark revival tomorrow? You know, the kind of revival that defangs privilege. God is the issue in every issue, including the issue of privilege and power. I hope you found this podcast helpful, and if you did, please remember to share it. This is Brad Bright. Thanks for joining me today. God bless.